Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
Let me tell you, the dopamine, it's flowing.
I am damn excited. Damn excited.
We are so excited to be joining you guys tonight.
Oh! Well, how you doing, man? Patrick.
Will Sterling.
Yeah.
Super Bowl champion, two-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Hey, everybody. That sure happened. Well, we'll see. Maybe the trade deadline will go on like it's cut down day, and we'll find something else out as this show gets on. Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict Podcast Trade Deadline Edition. Sterling Holmes, Josh Brisco. And as of the initial recording of this, the Chiefs made no moves. Correct. Nothing at running back because they're fine with Elijah Mitchell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire because why wouldn't you be? And then the defensive line is going to be apparently the exact same. Again, maybe we'll see something roll in late that'll make us eat our words. But as of now, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Brisco, how are you?
Probably in a similar headspace. I think on some levels it's good that the Chiefs didn't end up overpaying for somebody that they weren't terribly in love with. But I'm a little surprised that we did not see any moves on the defensive line. When we've been talking about that D-line room for weeks, and ultimately the addition was Mike Pennell, which I think was good and much, much needed. But I have a lot of questions about the back end of the running back room that you just alluded to. I have a lot of questions about what they expect to be able to do with the front four the rest of the way. And this is just kind of how it goes sometimes when you end up taking a couple of swings that don't pan out as the Chiefs have at those positions in recent years.
So I have some overarching thoughts on this. Let me start with by saying Veach should not be fired. I've seen too many of those nonsensical ideas on certain platforms that I find irritating and just ridiculous. But I also want to say this front four for KC when it comes to getting after the quarterback is brutal. It's brutal. Like, at least on the offensive side of the ball, you could make a case that the offense has been running really, really smooth, and a running back, they don't want to give him a lot of draft capital because they don't have a sixth rounder this year because they brought in Derek Nottie. That they only have 6 draft picks this year, and they're going to need those draft capital assets moving forward. But defensively, they have a pretty good linebacker group. Their cornerback room and safety room, I think, is really good. I want to get into McDuffie conversation with the news on Trent McDuffie, or with the news on Sauce Gardner in a second. But that defensive line has proven themselves time and time again to be an issue. And I'm not saying you have to overpay for a guy, but even a guy like, it's hilarious to say, like Draymond Jones for a 5th rounder would have made some sense. That would have been a pretty big upgrade over what we're getting and seeing from Charles Omenihu right now. So I guess in this instance, I'm just a little surprised that they didn't go harder, even any rumblings for a guy like Tavondre Sweat. And again, I go back to someone like Calais Campbell. I don't think Calais Campbell was going to cost much more than, I don't even know if a 5th would have been, I think a 6th probably for Calais Campbell would have gotten it done with Arizona. Now, maybe I'm completely wrong and they were unreasonable, but he's 39 years old on a rebuilding team down there. Sure feels like you could have snagged him away. Again, Veach is a damn good GM. Anytime you go to 3 straight Super Bowls, it's hard to find myself screaming. But I am a little perplexed at the lack of investment at the trade deadline and the D-line when we have seen that has been an absolute disaster this year.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you know this, of course, but you have to have two to tango. Like the Calais Campbell thing in particular is kind of interesting because that's a team that just won a game in a surprising fashion that is trying to like make sure that they are a serious organization, and he's still actually really helping the Arizona Cardinals do that. So maybe they just said, hey, it's not worth us calling about a 6th or a 7th round pick for a guy that we think is like important for the trajectory of this organization. Teams are going to do weird stuff like that all the time. There's just a report that just came out that the Titans didn't move Sweat because they see him as a cornerstone. Fine. The Jets thing is the one that feels the most obvious because they trade their two most interesting, high value, relatively young defenders and then don't move Johnson or Breece Hall. And so I end up in a little bit of, I can't say I'm shocked because, again, I think on some level, this is just kind of like the bed that you made. And the Chiefs ultimately looked at all the price tags and said, we're going to lay in this bed and we're going to go ahead and deal with the consequences of FAU not panning out, of not adding more to this defensive line, of Omar Norman not panning out the way that he wanted to the first few weeks and then season-ending injured reserve, obviously. And that one, they would have been a reason for me to say, oh, okay, we don't have to take a loss on the Omar front. He got hurt, and that's, even though that started in training camp, that's bad luck. So let's go ahead and add another body. I am surprised that Colin Saunders isn't on this team or someone of that equivalent. Now, look, I also don't think it's a terrible thing that the Chiefs didn't do another reunion before the deadline and say, okay, well, we'll go ahead and cobble over this. But you do make a little move for Derek Nottie before the season to let Mike Pennell walk. And Mike Pennell could have kept a 53-man roster spot that you held for Elijah Mitchell, and it apparently never would have mattered. So I tweeted this out on Friday or Saturday or something, that I think my gift and my curse at this point is that I care so much about the last 10 guys on the roster. I do care about the practice squad, probably just because I played Madden 08 in GM mode on the PC as a child. And I played a ton of that and updated the rosters. And so I did care about what happened again at the bottom of the depth chart, making sure you're maximizing your roster. But this is why when we talk about some of those foul tips from Veach in the offseason, it's not that he's the only GM that's occasionally not making clean contact. Nobody's batting 1,000. But when you do have those misses, you have to make a decision. Are we going to pay an inflated price to patch over that? Or are we going to deal with what we've got right now? And again, I'm less surprised that there's not another running back on this team than I am that they didn't make a move for a D lineman. I thought that made a lot of sense.
So first, super chat. Appreciate you, Christian. Love that Veach will trade a third for Tony, but not for a true difference maker like Breece Hall. Yeah, there was those rumblings of the Chiefs. And again, I have no idea if this was substantiated or not. The Chiefs, a 4th rounder with the potential for a third versus just a straight up third. No idea if that was substantiated or not, but some of the rumblings you saw on the X. But yeah, you'll trade a third for Kadarius Toney, yet you won't bring in Breece Hall.
Can I say one thing about Breece Hall that now that we're out of the trade deadline might be safe for me to say?
I wouldn't have given up a third for Breece Hall.
Nobody did. Nobody wanted to give up a third for Breece Hall. He's still on the Jets. That's it. I just think true difference makers doing a lot. I think he would have been the best running back the Chiefs have had in this room for in a long while, right? Like he would have been the best running back they've had since rookie contract Kareem Hunt, probably. Although I guess, I don't know, you got to tell me that like Damian Williams and Jerick McKinnon had worse tenures in Kansas City than Breece Hall would have had. I don't know. I think he would have been a good fit. I think he's a very good football player. But the idea that it's like, I just can't believe they could have given up a 3rd rounder for Jonathan Taylor is not what happened here. Nobody gave up whatever the Jets were asking for Breece Hall. And the Jets made 2 trades that hurt today. They traded 2 good players who have been cornerstones and got good returns out of them, by the way. I think the Jets had a good day by and large, considering the state of their franchise. Nobody looked at the price that they were asking for Jermaine Johnson or for Breece Hall and said, you know what? Fine, we'll pay that. So it's not like the Chiefs got outbid. And if Breece Hall would have been traded for a 5th today, if he would have been traded to some other AFC team for a 5th round pick, this is a conversation. I go, man, I don't know. I would have probably beaten that price, but I do think that's got to be like involved in the conversation. We're giving Breece Hall a gold jacket pretty quick here now.
Yeah, I would agree. And that was my pushback up for a while on this. And Breece Hall, I don't have a certain despair feeling about. Like I think there are some people who have overreacted to the Chiefs not landing Breece Hall when I think it's the defensive line that should be the issue, which brings me to this point here. The Chiefs have invested in the defensive line.
Yep.
And for those that try and push back and say, well, they're always drafting at the end of the first. Sure. I'm not asking you to land Myles Garrett. Mm-hmm. I'm asking you to land guys that can play. I'm asking you to land guys. Bryce Huff was a undrafted free agent. Now that's the outlier, right? I'm not trying to say that this is the norm. Yeah, there are a lot of first rounders that are outstanding. I get that. But you can get value in the second, third, and fourth. But when you miss on your first rounder, FAU, when you miss on your second rounder, Breeland Speaks, when you miss on your second rounder, Tano Passanio, when you miss on your fourth rounder, Joshua Kando, and you get nothing from any of those guys, well, yeah, now this is becoming a trend. Because Mike Dana for a fifth, been a good value.
Great.
And Karlaftis, good value. But at some point, we can't just sit here and say, well, they're like 2 for 7 when it comes to getting guys in the D-line. I don't even know if I would consider Derek Nottie a good value. Yeah. Colin Saunders, Tershawn Wharton had a great season in Kansas City, and then he was gone. So I'm sitting here wondering, outside of really, Chris Jones and Karlaftis, can they identify talent on the D-line? Can they develop talent on the defensive line? I think the answer would be no. You can say Tershawn Wharton, yes, but who else have they developed? Right? Because it's not like you've seen Colin Saunders go to the Saints and been great. It's not like you saw, Tano Passanio also go to the Saints and be great. So maybe it's an identifying situation. Kando was done. I just, and that leads me to believe I maybe would have been more apt to give up a higher draft pick for a defensive lineman, since we have now started to see the trend that is they cannot develop, identify, or bring in talent on the D-line. Take that back. They did with Joshua Uche, and they did not use him, and he's having a really nice year in Philly. Right? So, again, scheme is going to play a factor here. And again, they might win the Super Bowl, and we'll all forget all about this. But right now, there is a glaring hole on this team, and it was not addressed, and it feels very, very obvious from the offseason until now. And they're sitting there with the exact same thing, nay, even worse, because now there's no Omar Norman Lott.
Right. And again, they have thrown resources at the position. Not a ton in free agency, but that Charles Omenihu was like a decent little contract, and then getting him back again is obviously he's been a little bit disappointing this year. Mike Dana was a great draft pick. Mike Dana is not great at whatever his cap hit is this year. Omar Norman Lott and Ashton Gelati had a lot on their shoulders this season. I think that they, particularly with Gelati, ended up with a player that seemed to have a relatively clear path to professional playing time. Maybe in a similar vein to Karlaftis, doesn't have some of the measurables there, but to maybe to your point, Gelati and Karlaftis are guys that you're not saying these are toolsy developmental players that you need to hit their top 10% of outcomes to be able to be worth the draft pick. It's like, hey, who can we plug in here now? And then I do look at, I feel like I've lived a long life as a Chris Jones defender, and I'm probably going to keep doing that for as long as he's on this roster. But you do end up at a point where you say, hey, really, our only option to continue being a Super Bowl contender in these next couple of years, our only option is to extend Chris Jones and to pay him a ton of money into his 30s and to make sure we're backing up the Brinks truck for the guy that's been the absolute soul of this defense. I was fine with the deal then. I with the benefit of hindsight, they had to make that move. That was in part because George Karlaftis is ready to be maybe your second or at least your third pass rusher. He wasn't ready to take the torch to be the guy that defenses have to plan around, or that offenses have to plan around through a game plan every single week. That was still Chris Jones. So if FAU is a average starter, if he's a capable starter, if FAU is a capable starter, all of this gets easier. Maybe you don't have to pay that money to Charles Omenihu. We're also like, this is, I know not what exactly we're talking about, There were $12 million that could have gone to a defensive lineman that went to Christian Fulton and Elijah Mitchell, two guys who also did not get traded today, who are just healthy scratches now, just a ton of healthy scratch money on the inactive list every week that maybe Christian Fulton plays if somebody gets hurt, but that's a very expensive insurance policy, and not in the same way that Jalen Moore was. We loved the Fulton signing. I think we were both there. We loved the Fulton signing when it seemed like he was going to be the thing that unlocked Christian Fulton moving into the slot. I'm happy with Noah Williams. That is a hell of a calculation, and maybe he's going to be a daily, weekly starter next year when Jalen Watson probably gets paid by somebody else. I don't think the Chiefs could probably afford that. It's a messy sequence right now where I think there are some clear weaknesses now, and frankly, there are going to be some enormous win or lose. Missing the playoffs or winning the Super Bowl, this roster is going to look very, very different next year.
Super chat from Green, appreciate you. It says they could have gotten Draymond Jones for a 5th. The one thing I'll push back on is they would have had to been more because the Ravens' worst record.
Right.
So that was a 5th conditional 4th. It would have had to been a legitimate 4th.
Maybe the Chiefs just say, here's a 4th, and then they go, cool.
Yeah.
Which I think that's more useful than being like, I can't believe they didn't give up whatever for Breece Hall.
And I think it's a totally fair conversation to have, though, Green. Again, it's a guy whose highest sack season is 6.5. He is a little bit more in the Mike Dana production-wise, a little more so, but it would help because right now Charles Omenihu is one of the worst edge rushers in the entirety of the NFL by a lot of metrics. And all the offseason talk about himself that he was tweeting out about himself feeling disrespected has caused, I think, some even extra frustration, at least from me. You can't talk all that smack and then back it up by being the 103rd ranked out of 12th edge rushers in the entire NFL. That ain't going to work. So at some point, we all see between Nadi, Omenihu, Ashton Gelati, quite frankly, after the first kind of almost safety he had early on, he's a rookie. It's not his fault. Has not necessarily flashed.
He's played quite a bit, which is interesting, but he got a half sack against the Bills, and that was his first. Yeah.
So I guess just for me, I'm perplexed, and there's going to be a lot of questions if the D line continues to struggle, which again, I think full transparency, they will. They paid and expected, and this is the defensive line that expected and still expects Chris Jones to be elite, and he's no longer elite, at least this year. He's been merely good. It's not like Chris Jones has even been great or awesome. I'm not saying elite, but he's no longer been great. He's been merely good. And
while still being the best defensive lineman on this team by a length.
I would say Karlaftis may be better this year.
I wouldn't.
Just this year.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying it's going to end up that way. I'm not saying that it's going to stay that. But right now, if you're saying who has had a better season, Karlaftis or Chris Jones, I am taking Karlaftis.
I think if you could pull 32 offensive coordinators around the NFL, I think you might get 31-0 Jones over. In terms of who is causing more problems in the week of game planning, I think it's Chris Jones significantly still.
But I'm still saying production-wise, what has actually been put on tape this year, it's Karlaftis. Chris Jones.
I think you can say what's been put in box scores is Karlaftis. I think what's been put on tape is Chris Jones.
I will say this about Chris.
I'm willing to disagree with you. That's fine.
I like Chris Jones a lot, and he's a Hall of Famer, and he might bounce back and have a really good second half. But I'm tired of him, and again, it's not all him, when the other side of the defensive line's doing nothing. When we watch Chris and he just gives up on plays, or the second there's a double team that touches him and he just stands up and stops moving, doesn't even put his hands up, I get frustrated. You're getting paid $30 million a year. He is not in the top of the double team rate. It's a lot. He gets double teamed a lot. Don't get me wrong. But if you're acting like he's getting double teamed as much as some of the elite guys, you're out of your mind. He's not. That's the frustration. Like, he is elite, but he's paid to come and overcome that. He's paid like a Micah Parsons. He's paid like a Garrett. He's paid to do these things. He has not done it. And that's my frustration. That's where that lies. I'm tired of, again, it's not his fault necessarily because of the pressers, but I'm tired of him hearing the pressers and sometimes him joking around like, get a sack. Get a sack. I'm tired. Like, do something. I'm sorry. I know I'm ranting right now, but I'm frustrated by it. It just feels like this D line has so many issues And there was obviously a disconnect between what they thought Chris Jones was going to be this year and where Chris Jones actually is this year.
He's 31 years old. He's played 4 fewer snaps than George Karlaftis this season. Like, I just don't think it's all that confusing. I think the Chiefs should have probably had a plan in place, like Travis Kelce wise, of how are we going to get, and maybe that was the Omar Norman Lott plan, but again, now we're doing it with a even more shorthanded of like, how do we get the most out of Chris Jones while hopefully not having to make him play 80% of the snaps? And by the way, that's adjusting, not including the fact that none of those starters played in the fourth quarter of the Raiders game. I don't think it's a grand mystery. I think he has finally aged, and no one else on this defensive line has stepped up in that shuffling. So
that's also what the Chiefs had to realize at some point.
Right.
Counting on him to be your guy is also the Chiefs' decision. That's a decision they made. And right now it has vastly cost them. And by the way, I know people can rip on Karlaftis all you want. He is second, last I saw, second according to second in pressures of all defensive linemen this year. Now, not all pressures are created equally. Yeah. Understood. But Karlaftis is second in pressures this year. That does count for something.
Yeah, for sure. I've watched a lot of Chiefs football this year, and I have not yet seen George Karlaftis take over a sequence. I would love to see him be able to, if he can do that, if we can see one series a game where Karlaftis is hellacious, is affecting the quarterback on a regular basis, then he will instantly, that is the 5% at the top of his game, where if he can add that in, then that contract is going to look like a great value for Karlaftis in the long run.
I want to get into the Trent McDuffie situation that I think arises with Sauce Gardner going to the Colts and landing 2 first-rounders and a player. Because I think there's some interesting conversations to be had about that. And I also think we should have an overarching conversation on Veach this season and just, was that Bills game a blip on the radar, or how much of that is the new normal for the Chiefs moving into the second half of the season? Before we do that, Chiefs might be underdogs in a couple more games because they didn't do anything, and the Colts have gotten better. And by the way, they'll be playing in Denver. But speaking of underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like rushing yards, receptions, touchdowns, and a whole lot more. Whether you're into basketball, football, hockey, or any sport in between, Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. You can get your picks right and win up to 5,000 times your cash. Last week, I ripped the over on Travis Kelce. Ripped the higher right there. Felt so good. Ripping that higher on Travis Kelce. Nailed it. Ripped the higher on Rashee Rice to score a touchdown. Nailed it. Took the lower on Josh Allen pass yards. I didn't nail it, but I had fun. I still had fun, and you can have fun on Underdog. Again, it is a really, really simple app to use, a fun app to use. Again, I highly recommend playing on Underdog. And by the way, you can play in Missouri too right now, y'all. Make sure you download the app today and sign up with promo code Arrowhead Addict to score $100 in bonus funds or entries when you play with your first $5. That's promo code Arrowhead Addict. Underdog, make picks, win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado, 47 games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/playing. Get terms _DFS_HTML for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncbgambling.org. In New York, call it 24/7 HOPE-LINE at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
7.71.
So, the conversation of what Sauce Gardner brought back, for those that don't know, Sauce Gardner of the Jets is heading to the Colts. The Colts now have one of the best trio of cornerbacks in the NFL when healthy. Charvarius Ward, Kenny Moore, and now Sauce Gardner on a team and a defense that has no real holes. It was 2 first-rounders in A.D. Mitchell, a second-round draft pick just a year ago. Now, A.D. Mitchell has not had the career, especially the play, that a lot of people would like. He's the guy that dropped the ball right before scoring a touchdown. nearly fumbling it, just try to put it up, and it just fell. I don't know how people do that in the year 2025, yet it still happens, and it happened to him. It's kind of been a curse. Malachi Corley had that, and Malachi Corley got just shipped off to the Browns. AD got shipped off to the Jets. It's like if you do that, you get shipped off down a level. The Colts to the Jets, the Jets to the Browns. But it brings up the question, Sauce Gardner and Trent McDuffie are in the same category. They're in the same connection. It's like those two guys, Derek Stingley, Patrick Surtain, Christian Gonzalez might be in the tier down, but it's pretty close to that.
JC Horn got paid right around there, right?
Yeah, but I still think if you're taking like GMs, like who's the better player?
Yeah.
I think JC Horn's maybe in the next tier down. I don't know where you put Christian Gonzalez, maybe the next tier down. Still, point remains, I think Sauce Gardner and Trent McDuffie are in the same tier.
Top shelf young corners, yeah.
That being said, if you're the Chiefs, do you look at trading Trent McDuffie for 2 first-rounders? There is so many holes in the defensive line that you need to fix. You've proven you can get success and find success in the secondary, especially in the cornerback room. You have the ability, if you wanted to pay Jalen Watson. It's going to be at least half of what it would be for Trent McDuffie, and Jalen Watson's been outstanding. Do you try, and if you can, would you get 2 first-rounders back and a player for Trent McDuffie?
So I think I'm gonna take an even bolder stance than what you're offering me here. And I'm trying to make sure I think this is correct. I think because we're talking about it with Trent McDuffie, I think it almost has to be. My knee-jerk reaction is that I would trade any player not named Patrick Mahomes for 2 first-round picks. And I think because we're talking about Trent McDuffie as that guy, that almost has to be true. I guess you could have that conversation about Rashee Rice if you wanted. Obviously, his contract and what it would end up being in the future is still unknown, and we got to figure out, is he going to be like a Travis Kelce level usage in the next iteration of this Chiefs offense? So maybe Rice is an exception. I don't know if 2 first-round swings on wide receivers would give you a guy as good as Rice is. It also depends on who you're trading with. Is this going to end up being a top 10 pick, and you're going to get a legitimate like A grade player? You know, teams always talk about how they're like 8 to 12 true pure first round grades every year. Maybe some years you get a little bit more than that, but it's never 32. So if you're telling me that you're getting top 10-ish first round picks, which seems unlikely because the team that would be acquiring a guy like Trent McDuffie is probably contending like the Colts would be. But yeah, I mean, I'm certainly hearing every one of those conversations. And that's as somebody that would have prioritized getting that McDuffie deal done as soon as humanly possible. And maybe they couldn't, right? You got to pick up the 5th year, and then maybe McDuffie's agent and his side of things wanted to wait until these other corners started getting paid, so his number would go ahead and escalate. But if you would have given me a chance to pay Trent McDuffie before George Karlaftis or Nick Bolton or Trey Smith, I would have. I think he is that good and that important and that blue chip of a player. And I don't think a lot of players in the NFL are moving for 2 first-round picks.
I agree. So I guess that brings up in the offseason, because now the trade deadline's obviously passed. Right. You can't do it now. Now you also don't have the half-a-year rental. But again, Sauce Gardner's already on that large contract, $30.1 million a year. It's $120.4 million, which again, McDuffie's going to be that number and maybe then some because he's the next guy in line. So I wonder that, and this is something that I almost wanted to give Veach credit for with all the consternation and some of the disappointment that I have right now. I don't know if anger is the right word. I think anger is too strong for what Veach has done. Again, when you go to 3 straight Super Bowls and you've won 2 of the last 3, it's hard for me to get just angry and pissed off, right? I'm trying to have some sort of nuance here. Veach has at least shown the ability to make hard decisions, and he's not afraid of making hard decisions. The Tyreek Hill decision was hard. I don't know if people remember, 95%, at least 90% of people said, what the bleep are you doing? The Chiefs dynasty is over. Chiefs fans were angry. They were mad. They were pissed. Now the offense, how are you going to do that to Patrick Mahomes? How are you going to leave him without a legitimate number 1 wide receiver? And what happened? The team got rebuilt. And then again, they went to 3 straight Super Bowls, winning 2. So this might be another one of those situations. You might have to make a hard decision. Let's just say the offseason, it's a first and a second, right? Because it might be just slightly lower because it's the offseason. First and a second for McDuffie. Veach at least would have the stones, and he's shown the ability to say, hey, I don't care what the public perception is. I don't care what Chiefs fans might think. If I believe this makes the team better in the long run, I'm not afraid to make that hard decision. I at least think there's something in that. And again, you're going to have to probably sign Jalen Watson, because if you lose McDuffie and Watson and you'd be losing Williams and Najee Johnson, whatever you think of them, the point still remains. That's special teamers. That's guy that has been here for a long time. You're looking at next year having the only guys under contract at cornerback being Christian Fulton, who's been a healthy scratch, and Noel Williams. So there's going to have to be some sort of movement in that situation. But I guess I at least will give Brett Veach credit of, if it does come to that and he was to get an offer that Sauce Gardner got for McDuffie, I don't think that he's going to mess that deal up.
Do we have other examples of that since the Tyreek Hill thing? I'm literally thinking out loud, because again, like they end up paying Chris Jones, and understandably so. They end up paying Karlaftis. I mean, they've had some guys that they've let walk, but none of those guys have ever, I don't know. I think the last Sneed's a good one. Sneed, right. Sneed, okay, good call. Sneed was the last one that hurt to lose, and the draft pick in return there was kind of disappointing.
What about Joe Thuney?
Yeah, very disappointing in terms of the draft capital. I don't think that's one of those like Godfather offers that you got to make, because it hurts, but it pays off that way. The Joe Thuney pick, which by the way would have been, I'm going to go full circle. Everybody, stick with me. I know the chat's absolutely fuming today. The Joe Thuney pick would have been in the mix to use to make a move at the deadline. They traded that pick to move up in the draft, and they took Noel Williams. No one right now should be apologizing about the Noel Williams pick. He's been very, very promising to this point. But that's the time that you lose some of this draft capital. That, when you trade for McCole Hardman and he makes a play for you in the Super Bowl, you go, aha, it's genius. That's why you make those moves. You do end up paying the price for some of those little tolls here and there. Anyway, but full circle to McDuffie. The one other thing, like I saw a comment, like, you'd be an idiot to not trade McDuffie for 2 firsts. The other thing you have to remember when we're talking about draft picks, every draft season, like the same people who are like, those 2 firsts are worth everything, and it's a huge haul. Every draft season, somebody's like, well, why don't the Chiefs just move up to go get, let's say, a left tackle before Simmons fell to them, or just trade up and get a top 10 defensive end? Okay, here's how you do it. You have the 28th overall pick. You are going to trade this year's first round pick and next year's first round pick to move up to, let's say, number 15 to get a defensive end you really like. You have now spent 2 first round picks on that player. Now that has the benefit of a rookie contract, of a lower cap hit, team control, and a young player. But when you start moving those picks, they disappear very, very quickly. So that's why, to me, the entire hypothetical really does hinge in a pretty major way on who are you trading with. If you're the Jets, I don't think it matters that much. I think you take the Colts picks and you say, hey, even if they're picking in the mid to late 20s, that's really useful for us, because we're probably going to move up and try to get a quarterback at some point. We need to rebuild this entire roster in a big way. And no one expects us to win this year, and no one expects us to win next year. I think the one thing that Veach has that works against him here is that he has to do all of this while remaining at the top of the AFC West, or else everyone understandably freaks out because they live at the top of the AFC West. So that's the degree of difficulty hopping up another level in my mind.
Yeah. Again, it's a nuanced conversation when you are trying to, and expectations are Super Bowls. Making the playoffs simply isn't good enough. And when we look at this team and we look at what transpired in that Bills game, I think the glaring holes are obvious. It's why I've pushed back a little bit on the running back situation, because I think even if you get a better running back in this room, I don't know if they would even, Andy, hand it off more than 15 times a game.
Another excellent question that I would have asked in a Breece Hall situation. Yes. How many carries did that add to the Bills game?
And so for me, I look back and I go, the obvious answer is the defensive line.
Yep.
It makes Spag's job 10 times harder. It makes the cornerback room 10 times harder. It makes it that much more important that Jalen Watson's playing at a back-end CB1 level. I mean, like, again, I keep talking about Jalen Watson because Jalen Watson's been outstanding. I mean, he deserves a lot of credit. Again, contract year, undefeated, right? But we see the holes. And so I pose this to you. When we look at that Chiefs-Bills game, yeah, they lost by 7. They had a chance, right, with the missed field goal from the 50, but also they had to convert a 4th and 17. It felt like in my opinion, it could have been worse. So when you look at some of the issues that plagued the Chiefs in that game, does that feel like more of a blip to you, or is this some of the norm in the underlying stuff that when you face a good team, the Chiefs are going to have this issue going forward?
You'll not be surprised to know that I think it's some of both. Let me give you the good news first, because I do think that we saw a real problem on the offensive line for the Chiefs in this game, where Patrick Mahomes was being hit and being pressured more than the Bills had ever pressured him in any of these Mahomes-Allen era matchups. So that can't keep happening. The good news is I don't think it's going to. It's still very disappointing that happened against Buffalo, and a defensive line that is as banged up as that unit is. No Ed Oliver, and that was the tip of the iceberg injury-wise ultimately. But by the end of that game, the Chiefs had one healthy starting offensive lineman. It was Creed Humphrey. Everybody else was either a backup in the lineup or was actively playing through an injury. So I don't think, like, Trey Smith had a bad game. He's not a bad guard. He's playing through a back injury, trying to hold off 300-pound dudes trying to get to Patrick Mahomes. So those aren't really excuses. Those are my explanations for what happened there. I'm not big picture worried about the O-line being as poor as it was in Buffalo. Josh Allen, on the other hand, completed every pass he even thought about making because he wasn't being pressured ever. And that's the conversation we've been having about the deadline today. I do think that's probably going to continue. This isn't an instance where somebody's about to return like Josh Simmons is, or that someone's going to get healthier like Trey Smith will, or that Jalen Moore and Juwan Taylor, hey, as long as one of them are playing right tackle, I think it'll be all right. Bad day for you and I in our Wanya Morris priors. He went in at a bad time, but we're gonna hold strong. We're gonna hold the line one more time. I think that's my kind of two sides of that particular coin. I think that the pass protection that we saw through the first 6 games of the season or whatever, and really, I think the pass pro that we've seen, even with Jalen Moore, other than the first half of the Commanders game and against Buffalo. The pass pro we've seen from Mahomes, where he's looked comfortable behind that O-line, had some patience and been able to survey and everything, keep his eyes up. That version of the O-line, I think we are going to see again with Simmons and everybody else getting healthier. I don't think the pass rush is going to get a whole lot better. And I do think that there are a couple of canaries in this particular coal mine, if you will, where like some of those personnel packages were just getting dunked on by the Bills offense. And that's easier to do when you're not being pressured.
Yeah. I think for me, it was more of a blip than outside of the defensive line, which I've talked about ad nauseum. I think the offensive line is better than that. I hate using injuries as an excuse because when the Chiefs beat the Lions or the Ravens and they have injuries, we don't love when people use that as, well, they were injured, because every team has injuries and depth is so important. I do think this Chiefs
They're not excuses. They're just explanations. I'm just here to gas you up. It's not an excuse. It's just true. It would be foolish to say, yeah, Trey Smith had a bad game, so I guess he's not good anymore. Like he didn't.
No. I'm not saying he's not good anymore.
No. I'm here to underline what you're saying. I don't think we need to apologize for talking about injuries, because you're right. Everybody does it for the Lions and the Ravens and all of that, because it's true. It's true there too. The game still counts. The result still matters.
And that's what I think it comes down to, is how do you overcome and adjust? And the Chiefs traditionally have been very good at overcoming and adjusting to injuries. They have been, until it becomes too much on the offensive line. We'll see if that happens to the Chargers now, because quite frankly, the Chargers this year have done a phenomenal job of adjusting and overcoming without Rashawn Slater, multiple offensive linemen, but now Joe Alt. Will that be the final straw, like the Chiefs in 2 different Super Bowls, right? Especially the Bucs, when that stands out, when eventually you can do enough and then it becomes too much. We'll see if that's the case for the Chargers. For the Chiefs, on the other hand, I think overall, with Simmons being back, that helps the offensive line tremendously, because now that allows, again, as we've talked about and you just talked about, allows Jalen Moore, if an injury were to happen, well, now he's no longer starting. He's filling in for that guy. It just moves everyone back one spot. If Trey Smith's back is that bad, I would not mind having him sat that game. I get it's the Bills. I understand that. And obviously now in hindsight, it's easy to say that because now we know how he played. When you know how he plays, it's easy to say, well, he didn't play good. It's the back. You should have sat him. Well, in that moment, we didn't know how he was going to play. Maybe he would have played phenomenal, and we would have said it would have been worth it. But now there's a bye. Let's hope he gets healthy, because that is something to monitor. 300-pound dudes trying to block 300-pound dudes with a bad back seems absolutely miserable. Yes. I get how you could struggle. Makes a lot of sense. So I think the offensive line will be fine. Patrick's going to be fine. It was a bad game, but I also don't think he played as bad as some people thought he played. Maybe I'm wrong in that estimation. I thought he was below average for Patrick standards, but I didn't think that Patrick was terrible in that game, which I've seen some people who are just box score watchers try and tell you he was. Some fun stats here. Travis Kelce, some optimism here, leading all tight ends in the NFL in receiving yards.
That's
At
awesome.
age 36,
That's awesome.
Travis Kelce is leading all tight ends in the NFL in receiving yards, 540. Second place is a rookie, kind of funny, the oldest, and then, well, not the oldest because Mercedes Lewis, but one of the oldest, and then Tyler
Did he get
Warren.
a target last week? Did he catch a pass? Mercedes Lewis?
I don't know.
I'm on it.
But the point still remains, he's the leader, and he looks good. So I think he's keeping that up. That's all to say. I think what he did this offseason, good for him. He adjusted. The receivers, we're seeing Rashee Rice. My one question, my one qualm, Xavier Worthy, can you come back for the ball? Can you at least try and draw a pass interference on a 50-yard?
No, go ahead. No. This is fine. That's not where I thought you were going on him. Go ahead. I have a different Xavier Worthy thing.
He's not a bust. He's not a bum. I've seen too much ridiculousness when it comes to Xavier Worthy. But Xavier, can you come back for the ball? Can you high point it? Can you look at what Tyquan Thornton does and try and emulate it? I really like you, Xavier Worthy. But that one when Maxwell Harrison, give Harrison a ton of credit. That game. He was great. But there were two plays in particular where I'm going, Worthy could have drawn pass interference real easy. And he just didn't. He never came back for the ball, never even had he had an opportunity, but just never even tried. And I'm sitting here going, Tyquan Thornton would have tried. He would at least try and make the catch. It was like he was blocked off, and Xavier's like, nah, it's fine. We'll just go to third down. We'll go to fourth down. We'll punt. It's okay. That really kind of irritated me. And so I'm sitting back going, I need to see more from Xavier Worthy for what Rashee Rice is doing, what Travis Kelce is doing this year. I think I'm a little disappointed in what we've seen from Xavier so far.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. First of all, Mercedes Lewis did play 6 snaps last week. He did not get a target, but he did get in the snap count sheet. So good for an absolute legend, 41 years old, incredible. The thing I thought you were going to say with Xavier Worthy, and I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said there, but my head started going to this space of I'm a little confused about how he's being used this year or how he's not being used this year. I thought we would see another element of leaning in to him doing more in the deep and in the intermediate and even in the deep middle and more deep posts and other ways you can try to stress out the safeties. And I would like to see more of that with Tyquan Thornton. But since Worthy came back, it seems like he and Hollywood, they've eaten all of Tyquan Thornton's snaps. He's just barely ever out there. Looks good on special teams even. I'm not leaving my Tyquan Thornton jersey in the closet. I'm gonna keep it out. But I've been a little bit surprised by how they've used him to where I thought we might see a little bit more of like air quotes here, like real wide receiver stuff for Worthy, because I think we've seen both at his best in college and at his best last year. I think we've seen him show that he can do that. Now, back to Maxwell Harrison, I think that there's whatever he told it to Tyler Dunn. At least I saw it from Tyler Dunn about like Worthy's giving off his tendencies in terms of how he was lining up and then what the effort was going to be and all of that. Like that's a whole other ball of wax where it's like, oh, that's not great for Worthy. It's not great for Connor Embry, Matt Nagy, Andy Reid. Like Maxwell found this out before you guys did, or I don't know, whatever. Maybe there's some 4D chess. It didn't seem like it. Whatever's going on there, it has, and also you have to acknowledge, of course, that Xavier Worthy is playing with a shockingly blown up shoulder, and he's been playing through ankle stuff. Now he also hasn't been on the injury report, and somebody asked Andy Reid about that, and he said like, "Hey, Xavier doesn't want to be on the injury report. He's doing everything in practice and all of that." So those aren't excuses, but just other pieces of the puzzle. But I thought we were going to see. I think we're going to see an evolution in how Xavier Worthy was used, not a first stage Pokemon to final stage Pokemon evolution, but just another little bit of growth there. And I don't know that I'm ready to call it regression, but it feels like it sort of stalled out a little bit. And I truly don't know. Maybe we'll find this out during the bye week. Maybe there'll be a Seth Kaiser deep dive. I don't know. But I don't know if that's mostly about what Worthy has been. I don't know if that's about what the coaching staff has asked him to do. But I think I've been a little bit underwhelmed by both of those sides of the Xavier Worthy coin so far.
So where do the Chiefs, again, as we're wrapping up, have not made a move in the trade deadline? Looks like it's officially done, and it's not going to be like the cut down day where you'll see late guys sign like we saw the Chiefs have earlier on. Looks like the Chiefs roster is the Chiefs roster. You might see some players get cut from other teams. And then
maybe that's the Colin Saunders thing, by the way. Like if he's been healthy scratches and stuff, I don't know.
Then they hit the waiver wire, and I don't know if another team's picking up Colin Saunders. But for example, Calais Campbell, he ain't making it to KC. That's not going to happen, right? So if you're looking for a game changer, that is past that situation for this season. So what do the Chiefs do? Let's just go with the biggest concern that you and I have. I know we spent a lot of time on it, and just kind of a recap here, if you will. What will the Chiefs have to do, need to do to win a Super Bowl? What do they need to do? What do they have to do to go for 3 and 4 years?
I think they need to get a great playoff run and stretch run from Chris Jones and Steve Spagnuolo. I think that's specifically with the defensive side, because like I said, we talk so much about the pass rush. I feel pretty good about the secondary. It's not perfect, but it's good. Drew Tranquill had a horrendous day against Buffalo. And I'm going to make that a Spags thing where it's like sub packages. Tranquill's going to stay on the field over Jeffrey Bassa. That's not going to change. That's not happening this year. But if Jaden Hicks gets some more sub-package snaps and takes some of that work away from Drew Tranquill, maybe that's an adjustment they can make. The thing that I'm being a little bit cheeky about there is like, I see the weeping and gnashing of teeth in the chat. I've seen it all show. If the Chiefs make the playoffs and then get playoff Mahomes, Kelce, Jones, Spagnuolo, Reed, they are the best team in the NFL. And they're no lock to win the Super Bowl. But if you get to the playoffs and you get gold jacket performances from 5 Hall of Famers that I just named there, then I think they are as, if not more dangerous than anybody. So that's the kind of that's the big picture element of this thing that makes today feel kind of small, but it's also so frustrating because the path is harder now. There aren't a lot of other paths to get there. I can't say, well, it's either a Chris Jones, Spags, Hall of Fame sequence, or Omar Norman-Law and Ashton Gelati take a step forward during the season, and Jermaine Johnson gets into the rotation really quickly, and he adds some juice, which makes Minahu and Dana better. Like it really does feel like you're kind of just picking one door on the defensive side, and Jones and Spagnuolo are the only 2 guys right now who I feel like you can ask for even more from, because you've seen them give genuinely game-wrecking stuff so many times, particularly in the playoffs in recent years. So I think that's how you have to do it.
Yeah, it's a bummer, but yet you and I agree lockstep on this. So there's not a argument. I'm with you. It has to be Chris Jones. He can't be what he's been so far. This defense and this team was not built for Chris Jones to just be good. I understand the thought process of double teamed and how much can you do at 31. I get it, but that was what was expected. Fair or not, that was expectation for Chris, expectation for this defensive line. He's not been that. So I still think you're right. He has something left, stuff to prove this season. It's going to have to be Spags doing these ridiculous blitzes, doing the Nick Bolton, who's been very good, by the way. It's a new development for Nick Bolton's game. Going up to the line of scrimmage and blitzing and all of that. He's been really good, using a lot more Leo Chenal. I want to say Charles Minahu, but we haven't seen anything that has shown us that he is going to revert back to the glimpses we saw when he was playing a few seasons ago prior to the injury. And so I think this is what it is, and it's going to have to be Spags almost every single game, drawing up and creating a bespoke game plan, while Chris Jones is going to have to be the Hall of Famer, while Karlaftis is a really solid number 2. I think that's what it comes down to. At least even to Lions speaking, of course.
Yep,
So
I'm with you.
the only way you can get pressure, because again, Josh Allen had time to kill the chicken, get the wing, double dip it, let it cool, make your own blue cheese, then eat the wing before he felt any sort of pressure in that game.
And then if you want to go ahead and flip it to the offensive side, I do think, again, the path there is wider because your quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. And so I do expect the offensive line to look, I hope, fingers crossed, knock on wood, I hope and I believe, I think that Bills O-line performance was probably the worst we're going to see this season, because I think it's going to be the thinnest the group is. Again, like Simmons is back in the building. And I think it's a good time for a bye for Kingsley and Trey Smith and Juwan Taylor. Honestly, probably good for Jalen Moore also, just because playing football seems hard and he's had to be out there a lot, and gives him a chance maybe to do a little extra self-scouting perhaps and figure out what's gotten him beat a little more these last couple of weeks. But it's a good, interesting. Jacoby Brissett's going to start on Sunday. There we go. Kyler Murray in Arizona.
As they have said for the past 2 weeks that, no, Kyler Murray is still our starter.
Yeah.
He's still our guy.
He's just mysteriously still hurt as of game day. Anyway, and I think the running game, maybe this is a frustration from the Buffalo game and a place where it can improve. And you're looking at Andy Reid like we do with Spags and say, hey, you're just going to have your best. I think Andy Reid's going to have his best down the stretch. I do think, frustrating as it is, I think Isaiah Pacheco makes a difference in the Bills game, even if it's just because Andy Reid's willing to give it to him a couple more times without making it Kareem Hunt's like 15 through 20th carries. I think you do a little more under center, which plays into specifically Pacheco's preferences and his skill set. And there were some weird things going on offensively against Buffalo. We talked about it with Worthy a little bit, but like, I saw too many snaps where everybody was gloved up, too many snaps where there was just not separation, and sometimes some kind of weird personnel packages too. That might have just been a relatively small sample size. It just stands out because it was odd. I think you have to have the best you can get out of Andy Reid schematically. Say, okay, we're going to figure out during this bye week, we're going to figure out how we jumpstart the Xavier Worthy progression again. We're going to figure out how to build this offense around Rashee Rice with a few games now of data of what it's looked like so far. And then if Travis Kelce is your off-speed pitch, you've got a pretty good arsenal there. So I'm still quite optimistic about the I would say I'm quite optimistic about the offense. I'm relatively optimistic about the defense, terrified of the pass rush in particular. I know this is also going to go over like a lead balloon in the vibes that today has brought. If the Chiefs sweep the Broncos and beat the Chargers, not accounting for what else is going to happen for all three of those teams the rest of the way, if the Chiefs sweep the Broncos and beat the Chargers, they're all tied. All of those records in the AFC West even back out again. The Chiefs would have the tiebreaker over Denver, and they'd be even tied up with the Chargers. That's how thin the margins are. Like, even as this season has been horrendously disappointing, if they sweep the Broncos, the AFC West is utterly in play. Now, that second game's on Christmas, I believe, so we're going to have a long time to figure that out. If they lose to the Broncos in 2 weeks, I can't say that anymore, and so I won't. But that's still true with this Broncos game coming up after the bye. And man, I think that Broncos team is a papered horse. I am saving. I can't wait to talk about the Broncos after Thursday Night Football against the Raiders, which I assume they will win by 3 points. And I'm going to have to come back around again and say, guys, I think this Broncos team is exactly who they've looked like this whole time. I don't care that they're going to end this season 15-2.
We are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. That's basically what they've done, and every team has said every single year or every game whilst playing the Broncos. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us. Give us 5 stars, please. 5 stars wherever you get your podcast. It does help us out a lot.
Joshua in the chat, what if they lose to the Broncos and Colts? Then it'll be worse, Joshua. It'll be significantly worse if they lose their next 2 football games.
I mean, Joshua's not talking to himself right now. Joshua's talking in third person. Things are bad. Vibes are not high, apparently.
Joshua, you got to pull this together, man. People are starting to notice, Joshua.
But we appreciate you. We appreciate you guys and your passion. Even if we disagree, we are still all a part of Chiefs Kingdom. Man, that was very cheesy.
Man.
I will leave you. Yeah, why did I sound like Owen Wilson?
Yeah, golly, even in these divisive times, we can all come together to understand one thing. We are all part of Chiefs Kingdom. Yeah.
I will leave you with this. As bad as things look and feel at this exact moment, this is still the same team that has won 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. They've been to 3 straight Super Bowls. Their quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. And prior to this Bills game, we were talking about the Chiefs turning a corner and blowing teams out. I'm just saying, let's keep that in mind. Okay? Until next time, we'll be here tomorrow. Adam Best and myself, Brisco. In about 30 minutes, you can listen to him on Only Weird Games, because that's what the Chiefs play in. Only Weird Games. Until next time, we are out.